Hey everyone, so I'm 3 months out into my second attempt at MARPE slash MSE, and it's been really successful so far. I finished the bulk of my expansion a while ago, and now that I have the arms removed and I have Invisalign, I'm doing some very small expansion, very slow. It's not totally necessary, but I was having some pain on my teeth from the expansion, so now that the arms are removed, maybe I can afford to get a little more expansion. It's a little experiment, but either way, I've mostly finished treatment, and because of that, a lot of people have asked me, how do you feel? It's a good question. I mentioned this in one of my other videos, but I wanted to talk about it more. I feel a lot worse, but I think I know why, for my personal experience anyway. And I think that the reason is because my expander is interfering with having good, proper resting tongue posture. I've talked a little about proper resting tongue posture in a few other videos, but let me go back a little to before I started vlogging about all of this. Before I started any of these YouTube videos, I was in a difficult position because I felt terrible. I had a diagnosis for obstructive sleep apnea, and I had been using CPAP for years. The numbers on the machine looked good. I asked many different doctors, but I just still didn't feel good. Eventually I realized that the numbers reported from the machine don't mean a whole lot, or at least they're not definitive. And that kind of led me down this route of making anatomical changes and surgery and expansion and stuff like that. But before I got into any of this, I was desperate for anything. And so one of the things that I picked up was I stumbled into the whole mewing orthotropics community, where they claim that you can get changes in your skull through natural exercises and tongue postures over time. And I don't know. I think I think a lot of it might be pseudoscience, but I think it's very important for kids at the very least. But one thing that I did find is, although I didn't find any changes in my skull, I found changes in my tongue, and it was very helpful. I started to notice that I was having less mouth leaks from my CPAP mask. I was having, I stopped needing to tape my mouth at night. I started feeling better over time, and I was really happy I did that. I was doing resting tongue posture. I was chewing mastic gum, which is this kind of tree sap, a very tough gum to help train, I guess, your tongue or whatever. I actually was enjoying it. And then when I got my first MSE, which failed, you can't achieve that proper resting tongue posture, which is to have your tongue completely up on the roof of your mouth from the front to the back, because not only can you not make a seal, but which you need that suction hold seal to keep your tongue up, but there's now just something in the way. And I started having more mouth leaks. I started feeling worse over time. I had that first MSE for like a month, and then I got it removed. I started practicing the proper resting tongue posture stuff again, and I started feeling better again. And then after a few weeks, I went to my second attempt of MARPE slash MSE, which is what I have installed now. And the same thing happened. Started getting more mouth leaks. My tongue was collapsing more into my throat. I would have more disturbed breathing. So I did successfully expand, and my nasal congestion did improve. Not as much as I would have hoped. It's hard to estimate, but I would say like 30 to 60% improvement, something like that. And that was helpful. I mean, in some ways it helped. I mean, I didn't wake up in the middle of the night with such bad nasal congestion that I just couldn't go back to sleep anymore. And that was really helpful. But I just, as the weeks went by, more and more, my tongue just got so lazy that I was just having constant leaks, constant disruptions. And I even have some videos that my partner took of me sleeping, and you can see that even though I have my mouth taped, it's just air is just leaking into my mouth, and I just can't control it. I felt so terrible. It's just one of those things where it's got to get worse before it gets better. And if you're wondering what the reason is for why it causes these mouth leaks, is I have a nasal CPAP mask, meaning it only goes over my nose. It actually goes under my nose. And so the air from my nose to my lungs is pressurized, but not my mouth. And so there's more pressure in my posterior airway than there is in my mouth, making my mouth a path of least resistance if I don't create a proper seal with my tongue. And so that air then leaks into my mouth, my tongue falls back more, and it causes me to wake up, and I have way more arousals. And so what I did was last night I switched back for the first time in years to a full face mask, one that goes over your nose and your mouth, so that the pressure in your nose and your posterior airway and your mouth is all the same. There is no path of least resistance. And even if your mouth hangs open and you can't have proper resting tongue posture, you're not going to get leaks. You might still get some more tongue-based collapse, depending on how well the CPAP is working for you. But I feel better. So that's something that you might want to look into if you're someone that does CPAP and you're doing MARPE/MSE. Pay attention to how you feel. See if maybe you're experiencing what I'm experiencing, and if you are, it might be worth going to full face mask at least for the duration of the expansion. Different providers do it differently, but my orthodontist, she specifically keeps the expander in your mouth, drilled into the bone, while new bone forms and heals and solidifies for 6 months at least after the end of expansion. So if you expand for a whole month or two, you got to wait an additional 6 months or more before you get it removed. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. I have some videos coming up in the future I'm really excited about, so subscribe if you are interested in those. A couple that are in the pipeline are I started a new treatment for obstructive sleep apnea, which is like an electrical shock therapy, which is really interesting. It's a new treatment that I'm excited to talk about. And another video on the pipeline is going to explain some of the terminology in this field, because I know it was confusing, and it still is confusing for me and a lot of you, and I think it'll help us all have discussions and even make us more aware about what options we have and what questions to ask. So stay on the lookout for that. Take it easy.